Beware what you ask, nomad. Curiosity is a charming trait until it is not. Curiosity. Information will be volunteered, not coerced. It will create more questions than it answers. When at last their shadow is cast upon the firmament, it will take more than you can possess to bind and silence the screams within your mind. Silence.
Hi, I'm Chris Wilson from Grinding Gear Games. Thank you so much for joining us today as we unveil Path of Exile's 3.13 expansion. This release contains everything you've come to expect from a Path of Exile expansion release. A new challenge league, new skills, new items, metagame rebalances, and an endgame content update which will leave a lasting impact on Path of Exile. Our team have been very hard at work over the last few months, and we've got a lot up our sleeves to share with you today. But before we jump in, we wanted to mention that Twitch drops are enabled for the duration of this live stream. Below the stream, you'll find the instructions to link your Path of Exile account to Twitch so that you're eligible to receive drops. 2020 was certainly a difficult year for development, but it was also one that saw a lot of big things happen with Path of Exile. In late 2019, we held our first ExileCon convention, where we announced several projects, including Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile. Throughout 2020, we developed 4 major expansions: Delirium, Harvest, and Heist, as well as the one we're going to unveil today. We launched on the Epic Games Store and released our Vulkan renderer and a macOS client for Path of Exile. We're really proud of what we achieved last year under difficult conditions and can't wait to continue the journey with you through 2021, where we expect to reveal much more about Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile Mobile, as well as 4 releases for Path of Exile, including the one you're about to see. Thanks again for being here with us. It wouldn't be possible without you. In today's livestream, we'll kick things off with a 3.13 announcement trailer, then take a deep dive into exploring the new expansion's content and features. Once the reveals are wrapped up, we'll launch into a live Q&A where community streamer Ziggy D will ask me questions from Twitch chat, so be sure to get your questions ready. Once the Q&A is over, we'll be jumping into an episode of the Bay Class podcast, where Taki Cat and his crew of Path of Exile veterans will discuss today's reveals. I'm sure you're keen for me to stop talking and start revealing the new content, so let's jump right into the 3.13 trailer. See you on the other side.
What drives you, Exile? Is it justice? Revenge? Honor? No. It is power. We felt your deeds. Felt their shockwaves ripple through the void. You have our attention. Now you must keep it. Your limits will be tested. Break them. Do what is thought impossible, and the Atlas will follow. Themselves will bear silent witness. How far will you bend before you break?
That's one of my favorite Path of Exile trailers. We've released, like 35 trailers so far over the last decade, and I still get shivers watching each new one. Props to our video guy Eben for great work as usual. So there's a lot to cover based on what we've just seen. Let's get right into it. In 2016, we introduced the Atlas of Worlds, a formal progression system for Path of Exile's endgame maps that culminated in a pinnacle boss fight against the Shaper. Since then, the War for the Atlas and Conquerors of the Atlas expansions have expanded the Atlas system, introduced new endgame bosses, broadened mechanics, added new rewards, and provided more opportunity for mastery of Path of Exile's endgame. The Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces a new pinnacle boss, a new way to fight many map bosses at the same time, 11 new maps to explore, and new endgame rewards to earn. Just a few map tiers into Echoes of the Atlas, you will begin to encounter an NPC called the Envoy. It seems that when the Elder was sealed, its absence didn't go unnoticed. The Envoy speaks ominously of new visitors to the Atlas. The first such visitor, and the focus of this endgame expansion, is an entity called the Maven. You'll first encounter the Maven in the boss arena of a map, where she will make the boss encounter more difficult and watch as you do your best to defeat it. If you're successful, she'll give you her beacon, which lets you call her to any map in that region so she can watch more fights. After showing her your boss-killing prowess, she will give you an invitation to her own realm, where she has prepared a special challenge. The Maven really wants to push you to your limits and has fabricated copies of the bosses she watched you defeat. This time, however, you'll have to defeat them simultaneously. If you manage to best her challenge, she'll politely ask you to do the whole cycle again, except this time she wants to watch more and tougher fights, and her next challenge will contain 4 bosses, then 5, then 6, and finally 10. If you're persistent and talented, you may even get to fight the Maven herself, in a very difficult boss encounter designed to challenge the strongest and best Path of Exile players. Completing the Maven's challenges offers the opportunity to acquire some very powerful new rewards, including Atlas passive skill points, craftable watchstones, and even the Maven's Orb. As you complete the Maven's challenges, you'll earn a new type of passive skill point that can be allocated on a special passive skill tree in that region of the Atlas of Worlds. Each of the Atlas's regions has its own passive tree, and they generally have around 20 nodes to choose from. You can earn up to a total of 10 skill points per Atlas region. Let's check out some of the Atlas passive choices in the Glennick Cairns region. This branch allows you to focus on Beyond, increasing the amount of experience granted by Beyond monsters, but also allowing you to spawn more Beyond monsters really easily. The Torn Veil notable will drastically increase the quantity of Beyond demons you can encounter. The Legion branch has a notable passive which increases the amount of time you have to break enemies out, and makes it easier to break them out. It's an example of a skill that you could invest into while you're weak, and then remove it later once you're more powerful. And yes, as I implied here, there is an orb that lets you refund Atlas passives. The Incursion branch allows you to more easily get higher tier rooms in the Temple of Atsuatl, and helps you make a definitive decision on whether to swap specific rooms. On the Ambush branch, the tamper-proof notable passive upgrades all strongboxes to be rare and corrupted. This synergizes incredibly well with the Ambush Zana mod or prophecies like Monstrous Treasure. While it prevents you from re-rolling valuable types of strongboxes, the sheer number of corrupted 6-socket and 6-link items will certainly be tempting. Now let's have a look at the Atlas passive choices available in the Lex Proxima region. The Harvest branch can increase your chances of finding a sacred grove, increase its crafting rewards, and make it more likely that you'll encounter a Shavi. We'll explain later in the presentation about how Harvest is being integrated into the core game in this expansion. The Torment branch can increase item drops from possessed and touched monsters, as well as populating the area with some already possessed monsters. These synergize quite well with the Sextants that guarantee a certain amount of rewards from possessed monsters. The Delve branch can increase your Sulfite gains, grant more Master Favor, and grant more Nico Master missions. The Sulfite Infusion notable passive grants Sulfite for defeating map bosses, regardless of whether the area has Nico present. This means that you'll be constantly gaining Sulfite for every map you do in a region, which is a great strategy if you're not already using Sulfite Scarabs aggressively. There are also Breach passives, which increase your chances of encountering a breach and ramp up the difficulty and rewards of your breaches. Naturally, new endgame content means new endgame rewards. Watchstones are an endgame item that can be placed in the Atlas of Worlds to upgrade a region's map tiers and add new base maps to that region. There are two types of existing watchstones: quest item ones that can upgrade a region and can't be traded between players, and unique ivory watchstones that provide special bonuses and can be traded. These unique ones are consumed after a number of maps are run. The Echoes of the Atlas expansion introduces 3 new types of craftable watchstones: titanium, chromium, and platinum. Like regular watchstones, these never expire, but unlike regular watchstones, they can be traded and crafted. They are found quite late in your progression through the Atlas. The eventual goal is that you replace all of your base quest item watchstones with new craftable ones over time as you upgrade your Atlas. Each of these 3 types of new watchstone has its own special mod pool, but there's also a shared mod pool that they all draw from. Like flasks, they can only be normal or magic. You can't find or craft rare watchstones. Because you can have up to 4 watchstones socketed in a region, up to 8 mods can affect that region, and some quite large bonuses to specific content can be stacked. When combined with the Atlas passive trees, these really allow you to optimize what content you encounter and the rewards from that content. The Maven's Orb is an endgame crafting currency item that can only drop from the Maven herself. It allows you to craft influence modifiers when 2 or more are present on an item by removing one modifier and upgrading another. When upgrading an influence modifier of the current highest tier, it upgrades to a new elevated tier that can have additional properties. This foul regalia has 2 Crusader influence modifiers on it, the percentage increased intelligence one and the physical damage taken as lightning damage one. When we apply a Maven's Orb to it, it randomly removes one of these mods and upgrades the other one to become an elevated influence mod. In this case, it upgraded the increased intelligence mod to also have +1 to the level of socketed intelligence gems. The other influence mod was removed. This opens up a mod slot, of course, so it's now possible to add another mod to it. Let's YOLO exalt it for good measure. Maven's Orb crafting is only going to be performed by the upper echelons of elite players, and pushes the boundaries of the best items that are possible in Path of Exile. One of the things that players look forward to in an endgame Path of Exile expansion is new maps to play. In Echoes of the Atlas, we have added 11 new types of maps to the Atlas of Worlds, covering a wide variety of environments. And of course, each comes with its own challenging boss fight. Let's have a look at 4 of these new tile sets. One of the reasons why these new maps look so good is that the environment art tile set and level design teams working on them have been doing so much work on Path of Exile 2 recently. And it's not just the 4 maps that we showed you here, there are 7 other new maps with their own bosses to discover in-game in this expansion. Whenever we release a new quarterly Path of Exile update, we start a new challenge league. These are essentially a fresh server to play on for that expansion launch, where players explore the new league mechanics, rush to conquer the new economy, race to level 100, and try to get the best items before their friends. The Challenge League being released alongside Echoes of the Atlas is the Ritual League. In the Ritual League, you'll discover several mysterious altars in each area you explore. Slay the monsters at the ritual site and then activate the altar to initiate the ritual. When it begins, you'll be enclosed within the ritual circle and will have to face off against both the onslaught of monsters you've just slain and also the specific powers of that altar. Each subsequent ritual in the area will summon all the monsters from the previous ones, so the difficulty and reward ramp up as you challenge yourself with each successive ritual. Monsters you kill after you have activated a ritual grant you points called Tribute. At the end of each ritual, you'll have an opportunity to spend this tribute on various reward items. These items vary greatly in power and cost, so you may find you can afford several cheaper ones or one more valuable one. For clarity, tribute doesn't transfer between game areas. As you complete subsequent rituals in the same area, more potential rewards will be revealed, which can be very expensive. If you can't afford to purchase a reward outright, you can spend a portion of its cost to defer it until later. This means that it will show up in a later area at a reduced price. Items can be deferred multiple times until you can eventually afford them, and for some of the most valuable rewards in this league, this may be the easiest way to obtain them. You can also spend some tribute to re-roll the contents of the reward screen one time per instance if you'd like a new set of reward items to choose from. Among the many other rewards you can choose from in Ritual are a special new set of Ritual base types. These are craftable items that have different implicit modifiers than Path of Exile's regular base types. Specifically, they have a strong upside combined with an accompanying downside. If you can create a build that mitigates this drawback, then you can take advantage of the power of these items and craft them into something amazing. For example, these Nexus gloves reduce your maximum mana but have a chance of immediately refunding the mana spent to use a skill. If you can work around this restriction to your mana pool, you can periodically use skills for essentially no mana cost. Here are two other examples of Ritual base types, the Penitent Mask and the Stormrider Boots. The Penitent Mask applies the Crush debuff to you, removing your physical damage protection. However, its upside is that it increases the effect of Fortify on you by quite a lot, reducing the damage you take from hits. There are many situations where this is a huge win, such as if you already have no armor or endurance charges. The Stormrider Boots reduce your accuracy rating but provide a huge added lightning damage boost to your attacks based on your accuracy rating. If you have other sources of accuracy to rely on, then this is potentially a huge increase to the lightning damage you deal. In the endgame, you can obtain ritual vessels, which allow you to itemize the monsters from a ritual. You can place up to 4 vessels in the map device alongside a map to add the monsters stored in those vessels to the rituals present in the map. This increases both the difficulty and rewards of the rituals, as well as generating even more tribute to spend on those rewards. For example, because there's a chance of encountering a Headhunter or Mirror of Calandra as rewards, using ritual vessels increases the chances you'll be offered those items and allows you to afford them. In addition, you can use these vessels to substantially increase monster density in maxed out maps that have mechanics like Beyond or Delirium present. Using vessels, you have control over the risk and reward of your hardest ritual encounters. Vessels are tradable both before and after they contain monsters. In addition to the new endgame content in the Ritual Challenge League, a large focus of the Echoes of the Atlas expansion is on its Ascendancy classes. Path of Exile has 19 Ascendancy classes, which let you specialize your character further than the base character classes allow. To unlock your Ascendancy class, you must find the Altar of Ascendancy at the end of the Lord's Labyrinth. In this expansion, we've rebalanced every one of these 19 classes and have significantly reworked 3 of them, the Elementalist, the Inquisitor, and the Deadeye. The aim of these changes is to redistribute and simplify power so that Ascendancy passive skills perform stronger single functions more effectively. Let's check some of them out. The Elementalist has always been a good general Ascendancy class for many elemental builds, but lacked really in-depth build options. Now you can pick which elemental ailments to use for greater build customization, as well as providing more consistent power against tougher enemies. The Elementalists can also protect themselves from a large amount of elemental damage. Bastion of Elements provides a significant defensive shield against elemental damage, which can be further improved by allocating more skills on your passive tree and Ascendancy tree. The Liege of the Primordial and Elemental skills focus on Golem builds. Taking Liege of the Primordial now means that your golems are automatically resummoned 4 seconds after they die. To make your golems immune to elemental damage, you'll now need to spec into Elementor as well as Liege of the Primordial. Previously, the Shaper of Desolation skill forced you to improve both Shocking and Chilling, even if you didn't use both. We've now moved these benefits into their own branches, culminating in the Shaper of Flames, Winter, and Storm skills, allowing you to pick which ailments you improve. You can use and enhance Ignite, Chill, and Shock on any build. Mastermind of Discord no longer focuses on Heralds and allows you to strip all elemental resistances from your enemies effectively. Pendulum of Destruction has been reworked as Heart of Destruction, providing more elemental damage or area of effect when you need them most. The Inquisitor has derived much of its power from its Inevitable Judgment skill, but the rest of the tree was fairly straightforward and lacked anything truly unique. After our changes in this expansion, many more of the Inquisitor skills provide significantly more offensive or defensive power, while Instruments of Zeal opens up an entirely new and very unique playstyle. Let's have a look at some of the new Inquisitor Ascendancy skills. Pious Path no longer affects attack and cast speed, and now allows you to double the potential recovery of life regeneration by having it apply equally to Energy Shield. Sanctuary no longer provides mana, but now has a larger damage bonus from Consecrated Ground, up from 10% to 15%. Righteous Providence has been simplified a lot. It still focuses on critical strike chance, but it now scales it up by a percentage equivalent to either your strength or intelligence value, whichever one is lowest. It also provides plus 50 to both of these attributes, which is a huge benefit in multiple ways. You will definitely want lots of both attributes. Instruments of Virtue has been simplified and made more powerful. Its benefits no longer strictly apply if you've cast a spell or attacked recently, but it now grants 10% more attack damage for each non-instant spell you've cast recently, up to a maximum of 30%. It also grants Battle Mage, which causes you to gain added spell damage equal to the damage of your main hand weapon. This provides a lot of new hybrid spellcaster melee build possibilities. You can combine Instruments of Virtue with the new Instruments of Zeal Ascendancy passive. This introduces the concept of fanaticism, which causes spells you cast yourself to have 75% more cast speed, reduced mana cost, and increased area of effect. Fanaticism is gained by using attacks regularly, giving huge bonuses for weaving attacking and spellcasting together. Historically, the Deadeye Ascendancy was the best place to find a variety of strong projectile-based effects. But over time, more of these effects have shown up on items, and the Deadeye has lost much of what made it unique. We've brought the uniqueness back to this Ascendancy with a variety of new mechanics that enable new ways to build and play ranges. Let's have a look at the new Deadeye Ascendancy skills. Far Shot now deals 60% more damage to enemies far away from you, which is up from 30% before, but now also deals 20% less damage to enemies that are close. It no longer has a projectile speed bonus, but now removes the spread from your barrages. This additional damage rewards Deadeyes who can keep their distance from their targets. Previously, Ricochet caused your projectiles to chain an additional time and granted 10% more damage for each remaining chain. The new Ricochet allows your projectiles to both chain an additional time and have a chance to chain off walls and terrain. Endless Munitions has been simplified to offer 2 additional projectiles rather than 1 additional projectile and some other minor bonuses. This skill is accessible behind 3 of the Deadeye's paths, making it an option for many different Deadeye builds. Occupying Force is a new skill that benefits Mirage Archers by granting you additional ones and allowing them to be separate from you. Gathering Winds now always grants Tailwind to permanently boost your speed, and the increase to Tailwind effect per skill used is now given by the Gale Force buff. Wind Ward enhances the Gathering Winds passive by making Gale Force a lot more effective, with the drawback of losing all Gale Force if you're hit. If you can stay out of the fray, this potentially makes your character even more potent. The Rupture skill previously helped Critical Strike bleed builds. It's been renamed to Rupturing and has been simplified while being made more powerful. Critical strikes that inflict bleeding now also inflict Rupture, which causes bleeding enemies to lose more life, but their bleed expires more quickly. Focal Point is a new skill which improves the effect of mark skills that were made more powerful in our recent Heist expansion. It increases the effect of your marks by 75% and makes surrounding enemies deal less damage to you. As you have seen, the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye have undergone some major changes in this expansion. We have also improved the other 16 Ascendancy classes and will show you some of the changes to the Slayer to demonstrate what you can expect. Some Slayer effects were much stronger than others, limiting build choice. We've now provided more power spread out over a wider selection of passives, while allowing easier access to the Slayer's special leech mechanic. Brutal Fervor and Endless Hunger have switched places on their Ascendancy branch so that Life Leech is more accessible and can be further improved by speccing into Endless Hunger. Masterful Form still causes you to have endurance charges equal to the number of frenzy charges you have, but now grants an additional frenzy charge instead of increasing endurance and frenzy charge duration. Overwhelm's base critical strike chance for attacks with weapons has been increased. Hopefully you now have a good idea of the scope of changes that we have made to the 19 Ascendancy classes. While the biggest changes to the 3 we're heavily revamping, the Elementalist, Inquisitor, and Deadeye, all of the others have received at least numeric attention also. We believe that the new design philosophy for Ascendancy passives makes them easier to understand and that they are a more concentrated source of power. We look forward to revealing the rest of the changes next week. Like with improving Ascendancy classes, adding new skill and support gems to Path of Exile helps create new ways to play. In Echoes of the Atlas, we've introduced 2 new gems that provide versatile ways for you to build powerful new characters. These are the Hydrosphere skill gem and the Trinity support gem. First, let's have a look at Hydrosphere. This skill summons a huge sphere of water that you can move around to crush enemies. While it is active, you can apply cold or lightning ailments to it. It will then pulse for a duration, afflicting nearby enemies with damage matching that ailment. This player is applying Freeze to the Hydrosphere with Freezing Pulse, and that causes it to repeatedly damage surrounding enemies with cold damage. Here's the Gem Hover for Hydrosphere. This skill gem can be acquired from level 34 and can be supported with Spell, Area of Effect, Duration, Cold, Orb, Lightning, and Physical support gems. It pulses every 0.4 seconds while an ailment is applied to it. It also converts its physical damage to cold or lightning damage based on what ailments are on it. The Trinity support gem is designed to support builds that deal multiple types of elemental damage. While Trinity supports your skill, any hits that deal damage with a specific element will build resonance with the other two elements. The more resonance you have of every element, the more damage the Trinity support gem provides. When you have high resonance with all three elements, Trinity also grants elemental penetration. Here you can see the player using Ball Lightning with Unleash and Magma Orb to build resonance across all three elements. To power up the Trinity support gem quickly and uniformly, the player alternates between pairs of elemental damage types. Combined with the Elemental Weakness Curse, the Maximum Resonance Trinity absolutely decimates enemies. In addition to introducing the two entirely new gems we described, we have done an extensive balance pass on other skills. We have buffed over 40 existing gems, including skills such as Scorching Ray, Seismic Trap, Firestorm, Venom Gyre, Static Strike, Kinetic Bolt, Crackling Lance, Lightning Strike, Shrapnel Ballista, and Artillery Ballista. Full details will be available in the patch notes next week so that you can plan your perfect build. As well as introducing and rebalancing skills, another important aspect of keeping the metagame fresh in a Path of Exile expansion is adding new unique items to discover and build characters around. Unlike most items you find in Path of Exile that are randomly generated, unique items are extremely rare ones that our design team have hand-created to offer new build opportunities. Echoes of the Atlas introduces 10 new unique items, some of which are exclusive to its new endgame encounters. Let's have a look at a few. These are some unique worm-scale boots called Legacy of Fury. They place Scorched Ground as you travel, which applies the Scorch ailment to enemies standing in it. When scorched enemies die, they have a chance to set fire to surrounding enemies, dealing a percentage of the slain enemy's life over time. These boots create an interesting and new way to support your build with fire damage. This is a new unique amethyst ring called Black Flame, which is themed around fire and chaos damage. Its headline effect is that your ignites now deal chaos damage, along with a cool new chaos ignited effect on monsters. Also, if you ignite a withered enemy while wearing Black Flame, the wither will no longer expire, and you can build up to its maximum of 15 stacks, if the enemy survives long enough, that is. Along with its various other benefits, this unique ring should ignite a few new ways of playing fire and chaos damage characters. These new Zealot gloves are called Hand of the Fervent and create an interesting interaction between physical damage and the mana cost of skills. The unique ability of these gloves happens whenever you use a skill. They grant an effect called Sacrificial Zeal, which both adds a quarter of the skill's mana cost to spell physical damage, but also hurts you, to the tune of 150% of the skill's mana cost over 4 seconds. They also reduce your enemy's physical damage reduction. When we have time during an expansion's development, we try to identify past leagues that can be integrated into the core game as optional side content, with a few improvements. This expansion contains 2 such leagues. Last year, we released the Harvest League, which allows you to grow a garden of monsters, fight them, and then use their lifeblood to craft your items in powerful ways. Watching this league unfold made us realize 2 things. Firstly, the crafting options were so powerful and so easily accessible that players had unprecedented access to almost everything they wanted very quickly. Secondly, even the players who did enjoy the mechanics of growing their own garden would probably find it boring if that was something they had to do every single league. When deciding how to integrate Harvest into the core game, we knew that we had to curtail crafting somehow, but we didn't want to just do this by nerfing it a lot. We needed a smarter solution that still allowed players to earn and perform powerful crafts. We also knew that we didn't want players to have to grow and manage their own gardens every league. So let's check out how Harvest works as part of the core game in Echoes of the Atlas. In Echoes of the Atlas, as you play through maps, rather than finding a seed cache, you'll now encounter a portal to the Sacred Grove. But it's not your own Sacred Grove, it's an established one that has a full complement of plants ready to harvest, fight, and craft with. The grove contains several pairs of harvests to choose between, each displaying the details of the fight and the corresponding crafting options. You can only pick one of each pair, so carefully choose which crafting options are best for you, defeat the monsters, and use their life force to perform the crafts. If you're strong enough to kill the monsters, each grove represents quite a lot of crafting opportunities, and you can save up to 10 crafts for later use at the Hoarder crafting station, which is now available in your hideout. We like this compromise because it keeps the exciting elements of harvest, fighting and crafting, and drops the part that got old quickly, seed management and garden planning. We're also integrating the Heist League into the core game as optional content with a few improvements. In Heist, players travel to the Rogue Harbor to hire a crew of thieves to help them plan and execute risky heists, working towards a thief's ultimate goal, pulling off a grand heist. In the Echoes of the Atlas expansion, heist contracts drop from Act 6 onwards. Rogues level up their skills faster from completing heists, markers drop with higher stack sizes, and quest contracts are now dropped for you at the next smuggler's cache as soon as that quest is available. One great aspect of Heist is that all of its progress items are tradable, so if you're focusing on other content, you can trade away your contracts until you're ready to go on some heists. So we've covered most of the big features of Echoes of the Atlas so far. Keep an eye out for the patch notes in a few days where we will detail other changes that didn't make it into this presentation. Soon we'll move on to the Q&A about today's announcements, but first, let's have a quick look at the new supporter packs that are available right now to celebrate the Echoes of the Atlas expansion and the Ritual Challenge League, and to help fund the ongoing development of Path of Exile. The Faithsworn and Renegade supporter packs come with masses of points to spend in the store, social frames, forum titles and badges, a download of the digital soundtrack, and of course exclusive cosmetic microtransactions such as armor sets and character effects. The Renegade series has an exclusive pet, and the Faithsworn series an exclusive portal effect. Each series has 2 packs, and the smaller packs can be upgraded to their respective larger packs at any time while they are still on sale. These are, of course, in addition to the new core packs that we released a couple of weeks ago. Remember to check those out if you haven't already. Thanks so much for your support. As you know, purchases of these packs are what fund ongoing development of Path of Exile, its expansions, and its sequel. Speaking of Path of Exile 2, we know you're keen for an update. While today is all about Path of Exile and Echoes of the Atlas, we have plenty of Path of Exile 2 and Path of Exile mobile updates planned for you this year, which will start sooner than you think. Our team have been creating some amazing stuff and we can't wait to reveal it to you. So, I'm sure you have a bunch of burning questions about Echoes of the Atlas. Stay tuned as we're joined by Ziggy D, who will be hosting a Q&A with me based on your questions from Twitch chat.
to the Q&A segment for today's reveal. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris Wilson.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks very much for hosting. That was a lot of fun, actually.
That was I think since ExileCon, the most dense info reveal that we've had all in one go. I think people are a little bit overwhelmed. I saw a lot of people kind of exploding in chat, saying too much with the heads exploding.
Yeah, it was honestly trying to revive what we were doing at ExileCon with this announcement. We had a lot of fun presenting everything ourselves to the players last year on stage, and we thought, why not try that again? Took a bunch of work to prepare the live stream, of course, but yeah, I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, I was going to ask actually, because this is quite different to how you normally go about revealing things. So I was trying to recapture that ExileCon magic a little bit, which I think everyone is kind of in need of at the moment. It's exciting to see.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good distraction away from real world stuff and a good chance to get stuck into some PoE in the new year.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump into some questions, and this is a live Q&A. So you, of course, post your questions in chat as well. Chris, phone's off, Chris.
Yeah, well, people are just calling me on Discord because they see me on Twitch.
They're excited. They're like, hey, I'm going to call Chris right now. Now's the perfect
You're on the internet, bro.
Hey, Chris, wow, do you realize you're on the internet? We're going to jump into some pre-made questions, but you, of course, can submit your questions in the chat. We have a team of mods who are pulling questions throughout that we'll answer a little bit later on. First, though, let's start off with Echoes of the Atlas, the new overall major expansion. So this is like the core game content expansion, really endgame focus, with this character, the Maven. So this seems like an expansion to the Cyrus and Conquerors endgame that we have right now, in a similar fashion to how the Elder was an expansion to the Shaper endgame. Is there a similar sort of intertwining of the storylines here, like there was with the Shaper and Elder?
So our goal is that they exist entirely in parallel to each other, right? Like the Maven stuff is there at the same time as all the Cyrus stuff. But story-wise, they're different. It's more of a story expansion to the Elder storyline, actually, because whatever type of entity the Elder was, the Maven is also. And so there's some stuff for players to explore there. And so the Cyrus stuff still exists in parallel. We haven't taken anything away. Though we do want to foreshadow that it's very likely that before the release of Path of Exile 2, we'll probably remove or substantially modify the Cyrus storyline as well. We're still evolving the endgame in the direction we wanted to be in for the release of PoE 2, but the Maven will probably be around for some time.
I really like this otherworldly stuff that you've been kind of hinting at for years, like these other kind of universes that leak into ours in Path of Exile. So this seems like a further exploration of that, which I'm pretty excited about. But what led to the decision to kind of go that route and continue with like the Elder kind of connected storyline instead of continuing or doing something else with Cyrus's? Or was that just self-contained and felt complete?
The writers have a lot of plan for what they want to do in the future, and it is leading up to, I mean, we haven't talked a lot about the story of Path of Exile 2 and what's going on there, but we do have an overarching plan along our franchise, and so it's important for us to drop hints and set things up correctly with Path of Exile 1 in the meantime.
I still remember years and years ago when you said you had like a plan for 10 acts and a decade worth of content and things like that. Well, still going along with that like long arcing plan then.
Stretches out another 10 years now, yep.
Good stuff. It's good to hear. It's good to hear. So how does the Maven's, this is something I wasn't clear on from the thing, how does the Maven's kind of gameplay loop or cycle work in terms of content, how you engage with it? Does the Maven progression occur alongside the Cyrus and Watchstone progression?
Yeah, it's entirely alongside. Like, it's entirely possible to complete all the Maven stuff without yet fighting Cyrus and vice versa. Basically, after you've encountered the Maven for the first time, you can call her to witness map boss kills of yours. And so basically, when you're using the map device in an area, you click the little Maven icon to use her beacon, and then she will be present in the map for the fight. And her presence makes it more difficult, and it means that you've basically captured a copy of that map boss, and it puts an icon next to that map on the Atlas. And then from time to time, you'll get an invitation to her realm, where there's an escalating number of bosses you have to fight simultaneously, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the 10 one can be farmed. That's the one there that is a item that you can craft mods onto. And so that's the fight that you basically get to repeat with really good rewards if you're able to kill 10 bosses at once. And so there's kind of two parallel things you're doing there. You're earning the invitations to the realm, and you're also locking bosses in that she's got copies of. And this is on a per region basis. And that progression there is what dictates your passive points that you unlock on those region trees. And so there's 5 sets of 2 points that you receive for completing the 3, 4, 5, 6, and 10 boss fights, respectively. And then, of course, after completing the 10 fight, you have the opportunity to occasionally potentially challenge the Maven herself.
Okay, I'm guessing that'll be kind of secrets to be revealed from
Yeah, I'm
launch.
sure
The actual
people
Maven
will
mods.
work it out. And this is
Yeah.
all in parallel to the existing Watchstone progression, though of course it's super endgame stuff.
Yep. Okay. And you said this in the initial reveal. It said that this kicks in around like a few tiers into the Atlas. You start
Yeah.
capturing the bosses.
That's
and
right.
we don't need nets for that, right?
We took nets out early in development.
Okay, good stuff. So I'm pretty excited about this idea of fighting 10 map bosses at a time. I love boss fights in general. But something interesting we learned from Metamorph and the lab fights version of the Metamorph bosses was that it's often the map mods that actually make bosses difficult,
Yep.
and fighting them outside of that is often a lot easier in comparison. So how will the boss fights here, these Maven boss fights, be scaled in difficulty in the actual Maven's arena?
So as you're playing through them, initially doing 3, then 4, then 5, and so on, those ones there are difficult because there's multiple bosses at the same time. But by the time you need mods in order to make them harder, that's when mods start to kick in on the invitation items that you get for the farmable 10 boss fight. So that one's craftable. And so you definitely want to pump the rewards on that one as much as you can, because that's the place where you're finding a lot of the good in-game rewards from. You're finding, chase uniques, and you're finding craftable watchstones and so on.
Okay, I have a few questions from that. Unexpected ones. You mentioned invitation items, so there's an itemized system here.
So the first invitations that you receive from the Maven to go to her realm and fight some locked-in bosses, they're quest items basically, because there's a strict progression of 3, 4, 5, and so on. The 10 invitation where you get to, that's the farmable one, that one there is a tradable item. And so you're bottlenecked by both having 10 bosses in the can, as it were, and also having the item with the mods that you want. And so because they're tradable, of course, it may be that you want to go and craft or trade for some that are incredibly good, or maybe you find one that's great, but it's too difficult for you, so you just trade it and get chaos to spend on something else.
So they have the bosses on them, on the item, and also mods, it sounds like?
So to be clear about that, you're locking in bosses on your Atlas at any time, and the item is entirely separate. And so you'll, of course, have the item by the time you have the bosses, because they drop at a similar rate, but it's entirely possible that you do have surplus items that you want to trade to other people. And it may be that you're going for just harder bosses, like you want to lock in 10 incredibly difficult and rewarding ones rather than 10 of the easier ones. And so, the two progressions are in parallel with each other.
Yep. Okay. And does the bosses you choose have an impact beyond just difficulty?
I don't actually know the answer to that. Does anyone who's watching over here want to clarify? Yeah, it's just the difficulty. And of course, people will have strategic reasons to fight certain ones.
Right, yeah.
I certainly know from last time I was playing high-tier maps, there are bosses I do not want to be fighting simultaneously, so I would not pick those.
Can you put like multiple of the same boss in, like 10 Katavas or something? Or they have to be different?
I mean,
okay.
The engine supports it. Don't get me wrong. This is a potential for the future, but you're fighting unique ones, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. Yeah.
This it's actually the first thing I thought when I saw it was it reminded me of those videos you put out of like bosses fighting each other. Is it kind of inspired by that or something?
Well, it's interesting because when we initially designed all the map boss fights, we made them work in their respective arenas, right? There's various triggers and distances and all that kind of stuff. And we have put so much work into making it so that bosses can work anywhere, so that you could just drop a Katava on the coast, essentially. For this and other things, the ability to have map bosses just occur in any place gives us a lot of extra content in the game. And so that's being tried out in the Maven's arena here. And it's funny, honestly, so much of the work on the expansion was genericizing the map boss fights without making the fights any less awesome.
Interesting stuff. Yeah, I imagine it was difficult to get things like Katava and stuff that were very locked in place, working in different arenas. I'm afraid that we're going to see things like Katava starts dragging himself around by the arms or something like that, terrifying like that.
Well, wait and see.
Okay. So in terms of the Atlas here, it seems like a pretty substantial step up in complexity with craftable watchstones and the Atlas passive trees, which look pretty insane, alongside the current watchstone progression systems, which a lot of people feel it's a pretty complex system for a lot of people, I think. How do you think the average or newer players are going to handle, how do they handle the current Atlas, firstly, and how do you think they'll handle this?
It's pretty endgame, and that means you have a pretty good understanding by the time you get to it. It's also introduced at a rate that's relatively manageable. You get it in pieces, and it's kind of optional as well. Like putting watchstones in, sure, it's complicated if you want to roll the best ones, but you're unlocking these over quite a period of time. Like they are valuable, they are endgame rewards. You do need to get them one at a time, and you have control over what the mods are. And so it doesn't really matter if you make mistakes there, because it's just going to mean you get worse rewards for your content. And so we don't think it's going to hamper anyone's enjoyment of the game if they're not maximizing the system. But of course, as they learn more about it, they will certainly benefit. And as you know, with a free-to-play game, many players who play it don't quite get through to red tier maps, and we're okay with that, but those who do will certainly have a lot of stuff here that they can play.
Right, I gotcha. Yeah, unlike regular Watchstones, it doesn't stop you from progressing so much as just give you extra reward engaging with the system well. So it seems like there's actually quite a lot of extra reward here. The passive trees in collaboration with these new craftable Watchstones, from what I saw of those passive trees, there's a lot of stuff like guaranteeing generals and legions and stuff like that that are juicing up the rewards quite a bit. How how much more rewarding do you feel the Atlas is going to be? And I guess you guys are comfortable with how much extra we're going to be getting?
Well, part of it is that for a while, players have complained. A word they often use disparagingly is clutter, that the endgame has a lot of alternate systems that you can choose between. And while we philosophically believe that it's great for there to be a choice of content for people to play, and they should play whatever content they enjoy the most and are best at, we want to allow them to double down on content. We want them to be able to say, I like this, I want to see it more often, and I want to see it be more rewarding. And that way, you customize what you want to be playing, and then you play that, and you get good rewards for it. And that enables you to trade those rewards to people who did other stuff. So, for example, if you just hate incursion, you never want to touch a temple in your life, but you want double corrupted items, you just do heist or harvest or whatever it is that you enjoy a lot, and trade those items for the double corrupted ones. And so both the Watchstones and the Atlas passives here allow you to influence content that you're encountering, make it more rewarding, and basically specialize, while still making sure that there's a broad base of Path of Exile content for you to experience if you do want to try something new.
I have always really liked the idea of us being able to really specialize in certain pieces of content. And we've seen, I think, a progression towards more and more of that, which is pretty interesting to see. It almost seems like a step towards giving us the ability to choose which of these things, like you mentioned, people saying that there's a bit too much clutter. There's like the option to effectively choose now which ones you actually care about.
We've certainly discussed ideas of reducing the base rate and having this stuff amp it up. And, you know, that's a change we might even see before release, potentially, depending on how balancing goes. But we do want content to be available that you encounter occasionally. Even if you've chosen to specialize in other things, it's nice to occasionally run into it, to have an opportunity to try it. That's the only way a player is going to work out that they actually can do that content and that they do like it. And so, you know, there's plenty of time in the future to tweak this in future expansions, but it's likely that we are not just going to turn content outright off and hide it away.
It's almost like they're little demos to tempt you into maybe trying to specialize in those and see how you guys like, oh, I keep seeing these Legion things. I wonder what it would be like if I specialize in those.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay. How hard is it to respect these Atlas passive trees? Are they something we're adjusting really often or leaving intact most of the time?
So there is a currency that lets you refund it, and that currency, of course, has a value. I mean, how long is a piece of string, right? Like, you're not going to be able to do this super easily, but wealthy endgame players can absolutely, you know, respec as much as they need to. It's just going to cost them, and there's going to be an opportunity cost to that. Now, there are strategies, of course, where you may want to respec these aggressively. You might work out that the best way of getting currency is to actively manage what Atlas passives you've chosen. And to do so, of course, that's going to burn a bunch of currency achieving that, and players will work out the right amount to do that's still profitable for themselves.
Yeah, I imagine this is like something when people are doing the like fully juiced content where they're stacking sextants and everything else to get specific content. That might be something they adjust to synergize with those things once they like get the stars to align for.
Exactly. And honestly, because this, like most things in Path of Exile, is a market-driven thing, it means that if there's little need to respec, then the respec orbs will inevitably be very cheap, and that means you can respec easily and there's no problem. And if it's just insanely profitable to respec dynamically, then people will do that and it will make it expensive, and we'll just have to have a look at the effects of this and rebalance it later on if needed.
Okay, so the reveal kind of slipped something in there that people might have missed. You mentioned that the Maven is the first. So is this planned as an expandable system with more people like the Maven, more
So
creatures like the Maven?
The eldritch entities that have noticed that the Elder is missing. Maybe we'll see more in future expansions. Who knows? I mean, you know, we've got many decades of lifespan left to spend on this project, so we have to come up with some more entities at some point.
I'm a sucker for things like that where you're like hinting at the fact that there's like an expanded kind of lore universe here that's going to draw from. I thought I'd ask. I figured it would be a maybe answer though.
Yeah.
Let's move on to ritual. So the ritual sites, it says that we pull monsters to them or that we kill monsters in the area. Are we intended to pull monsters to these ritual sites, and do we pull bosses to them?
Right, so you definitely don't need to and should not pull a monster to the site. And we did this on purpose, because if it counts the monsters that are nearby, and if there was a benefit for pulling monsters there, then the correct behavior is to grab half the map and drag it to a ritual, and that's not fun. So the way it works is when a ritual spawns, it's near some monsters organically because it's biased towards monsters, and it has a bunch of extra monsters on it. And so those monsters that are near it, you do have to clear before you start the ritual, but there's no need to pull extra monsters in. It literally does nothing. So you clear the ritual by killing all the monsters nearby, and it'll be a decent fight. And then you tag the ritual altar, and that resummons all the monsters in a staggered formation as you're fighting against the effects of the altar. And we didn't make it super clear in the video, but there are lots of different types of altars with lots of like arena-based combat that you get to do there. It's not really like an Orion mission where it's slow-paced. This is something that's really throwing monsters in your face. It's meant to be a fast-paced, bite-sized combat encounter. And then each of the subsequent ones that you do has all those monsters and more. And so because they ramp up in difficulty and reward, we totally expect weaker players to like call it and not do the last rituals in the area if it's just getting too hard for them. And so it's meant to be a thing where you do as many as you feel you can handle, which I get it for most people that have, made an effort to watch this stream probably means all of them because they're good at the game. But you never know, it might get pretty hard for you.
And just trying to flatter the crowd. You're also
it is true that the top 10% of players are the ones that are watching right now. They're making an effort to talk about the game.
Fair. So there's a bunch of items in this store once you like finish the ritual that you can purchase using as ritual points. Do the rares in there use the new high quality rare generation system that we saw a taster of in Heist?
Some of them do. There are basically different categories of things that can appear in the favor rewards. Favors are what we're calling the items you buy with tribute. And so some of them are templates that generate high quality rares where it biases the mods, and some of them are not. It really depends what we're trying to achieve with that particular slot. And we've tried to have a lot of variety in there. So yeah, occasionally you'll find exceptionally good stuff, and occasionally you'll find stuff that's there for another reason, potentially because it's got like let's say it's got influence on it. It probably doesn't need to have insanely good mods at the same time, because what we're trying to achieve there is giving you an influence rare rather than particularly good rare.
Okay, so we'll kind of notice like themes for the items that they're like built around then.
Absolutely, yeah.
When you complete a ritual, there's this ritual item store, and it like reveals a bunch of items for the first ritual of that map, and there's multiple rituals per map. Do the later rituals in the same map add more items to that same stock, or are they a new stock of items each time?
So the way it works is that the items are in the first window and some of them are hidden. So those ones, if you check back at the footage, have like a little icon over them. It's shrouded. It was initially the present wrapping thing that we use occasionally and stuff, but that looked real weird for it to be a bunch of birthday presents basically in the window. So the unrevealed items are there, and the reason why is so that you don't just cycle doing the first ritual in each area repeatedly until you find one with good rewards. The incentive is that you actually play through the rituals to get to the more advanced items, and the ones that are hidden from you are the more expensive ones, the ones that cost more tribute. Now, obviously, the best strategy is probably to do all the rituals first before deciding what to buy. That's fully intentional, right? It's not gaming the system to save your money until you can make a fully informed choice. But the reason that we show them early is because there's no reason not to allow people to go shopping with their tribute if they do see something they like. Like if you're looking for a Chaos Orb and you can afford a Chaos Orb after a couple of rituals, just buy it if you want it. I mean, you could wait a little bit longer if it doesn't hurt to wait longer, but you can make purchases early on if you choose to.
Making it so that we don't like cycle the first thing in a map and jump straight into a new map, and making it so that we can like defer items for purchase later. I feel like you're learning from our behaviors and complaints.
Yes.
Thanks. It's good. So does any of the like unique ritual loot or any of the like ritual-ish loot, such as new bases or uniques, drop from monsters during the rituals as well, or are all the new things purchasable from this favor store?
They're all purchasable from the favor store. So the new rewards do not drop from the actual monsters while you're fighting it. And we did that because we wanted the player to have to make a informed decision to pick that item, a chance for them to be presented with it and decide it versus other tempting things at the same time, to have a bit more gravitas there.
Okay, so I'm curious about these ritual vessels then. So they capture monsters from a ritual site to use in later maps. Is this instead of doing the ritual, or like an after thing after you finish the ritual?
It's an after thing. So you do a ritual, and if you think, man, that was a lot of monsters, somehow I got like a boss in there, I kind of feel there's a lot of tribute, let's capture it. And then you capture it after it. So you still got all the benefits of killing the monsters, all the tribute you get your reward from that, and then you have a chance of capturing that so that you can use it to juice a map up later.
I imagine the ritual favor points based on the monsters you kill. So just having a boss in there give you a lot more or something?
Absolutely, yeah. You'll get an idea for what just gave you a lot of favor, and that's when you stick it in a bottle and use that to juice up a map later. And it's one of those things where not only do the ritual vessels give you a bunch of favor by using them on a map, but it also just makes better rewards spawn. And so you'll get a totally juiced map. You'll chuck Beyond and Delirium on it, throw as many of these vessels as you can in there, and just have an absolutely insane time, and then get a boatload of tribute, and really hope that you have good rewards in the window, and they will be better than average by that point. So, I'm not guaranteeing you'll see a hit under then. I'm sure many people won't do. In fact, most people won't do. But you never know.
I instantly saw the potential here for like some sort of infinite loops. I'm wondering if you've counteracted that. The ritual vessels apply the captured monsters to all ritual sites in a new map. If you use a ritual vessel on the new map that is already enhanced, do you capture more and then can take that to the next map and then add infinitum?
We thought of that one. You can only use ritual vessels if you haven't used any on the map that you're playing. So it has to be on a vanilla ritual site.
Okay, so it's kind of like a one-on-one off sort of deal.
Yeah, which honestly isn't a problem. It'll be totally fine.
Okay, you're thinking of everything. All right.
That's one of the advantages of having the extra month, right? Like our goal was to release this in December, and we've taken extra time to actually, QA stuff as thoroughly as we can do, and to think of these things and put time into balancing it and making it good and making a good announcement stream. And, it's been really helpful.
Yeah. You had an extra month or two, roughly?
Yeah, 1 month, of extra time. And sure, there's still things being tweaked, right? Like, people were away over, Christmas and New Year during that time, and not everything was finished at exactly the point we wanted to a month ago, but it's certainly very smooth sailing through that period while we're working on 3.14 at the same time as putting finishing touches and testing on 3.13. Like, I believe that we have a 99% functional alpha build being deployed today for the alpha testers to start giving us a week of feedback on. And I know it sounds crazy for us to be making a big deal about alpha testers having a week to test it, but normally we're like, we're launching tomorrow. It's not done. The league's turned off. The bosses are turned off. Go. And there's nothing to test apart from does it crash. But now we actually have every single thing is there kind of situation for alpha. Though it's worth noting while I'm talking about alpha, because there's various competitions and that kind of stuff being arranged for league launch, and obviously alpha testers would have an advantage. One of the rules that we're putting in place is if you've played on alpha for a given expansion, you're not eligible to receive prizes. And so that's a big decision that alpha testers are going to have to make, where if they're actually like a top tier streamer who wants to compete, they probably shouldn't be signing up for the thing that gets them a competitive advantage.
Absolutely.
So if you've had a chance to pre-play the content, you won't be able to win prizes. You can still compete, but people will know you're an alpha tester and you don't actually get anything for winning. And so that's our attempt at making sure that with a properly functional alpha testing program, we have a degree of fairness in there.
That's really like surprising and awesome to hear. Like, because I feel like this has always been like a little thing in the background that's never really been fully acknowledged. That's really awesome to hear.
And I want to emphasize, because I can already see my email box blowing up. Please do not email me or other staff members asking for alpha access. It doesn't work that way. Like, we literally have a policy of if you ask, you're not getting it, kind of, right? So we have ways of selecting people. As the program continues to function better, we will add more people, but we'll do it in a fair way that gives people a chance to apply, or we'll select them based on their merits. And the best way to become an alpha tester is provide consistent bug report feedback on the main site. We invite people by looking at who is just giving us great feedback and putting time in. Alpha testing is not a prestige thing. It's something which is almost like an unpaid job, And thank you to the alpha testers for their feedback and unpaid work there.
Good stuff. Just a couple more questions before we move on to some questions from the chat. With the rework to the harvest system, removing the gardening side of things, how will the Ashabi quest and fight happen, or has she retired?
So you'll randomly encounter Ashabi relatively rarely. So you'll stumble in there expecting to get choices of crafting options, and there's the tree ready to go with the Ashabi fight.
Ah, okay. So it's just kind of a random spawn thing now.
Infrequently, yes.
Okay.
We rebalanced her rewards and stuff, of course, to compensate for this.
Ah, gotcha. So to heist now, the meta for getting the most value out of the system really became centered around the duplication of extremely valuable blueprints and running them infinitely for massive amounts of currency. Is anything happening that will affect this?
So I want to clarify that when Ziggy says duplication, he means through legitimate game mechanics. There are a couple of ways of copying the blueprints. And so, this is not an exploit-filled game if anyone is watching and worried about that. But yeah, no, it's totally fine. There are mechanics that let you split the blueprints, where the problem with that wasn't so much that the base blueprint was a good one that was being split, because there was a cost to splitting it. It was the fact you could fully reveal every single aspect of it, and then that would just carry on to the copied copy. And so the first change we're making here is that the split copies do not have any reveals. They're basically a like the rewards are the same, but they're entirely unrevealed again. And so you can continue exactly the same strategy if you have enough reveals for every single copy and enough markers to achieve that. And that's quite a big cost. That makes it significantly less economically insane to do it. But it still makes it good to do it. Like, it still means that if you put the effort into finding the perfect blueprint, having the master copy, going and putting effort into getting the ingredients you need to be able to split it, like the fossils or the beasts and stuff, you can still profit from this. But it's not quite as crazy. In addition, there's significant rebalance that went into the rewards, especially around those top tier blueprints. So the currency one is less insane, for example, and we're pretty happy with where this is. And when the community finds something awesome and profitable like that, we don't want to just turn it off. You know, we want to find a place where it now has a good, good location in the game to exist. And so we're more happy with this from a balance point of view. We think that it will still be potentially a good strategy for some players to do, but it won't be a ridiculous strategy that creates a lot of feel-bads for the rest of the community.
All right, good stuff. We have some questions from chat now. Thank you all for submitting your questions. First one comes in from Not Cakes. Will Atlas passive trees be tied to certain regions? So will Beyond, for example, only be available on the Lex Proxima region and no other?
I believe so. I'm just going to double check this with my guys. That's true, right?
Most mechanics appear on huge.
Okay. Yeah, so most mechanics appear on a few regions, but yes, it is true that if you want to do Beyond on, say, Glennet Cairns or whatever, if it's not there, then you do not have the ability to specialize Beyond in that region. And so the experiment we're trying here is allowing people to specialize on certain areas of the Atlas. It's not a global thing where you're just juicing your entire Atlas at once. You will have to find maps in that region. Of course, this can change over time. Give us feedback as you play. We think it's actually quite fun this way. It's certainly a more advanced way of doing it than what we could have done at face value, but we try to do it the interesting way rather than just say broadly a whole Atlas is juiced.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for things not being fully homogenized, not all being the same, provides like interesting strategies and stuff that comes out of that. So it's good to see that. I imagine this also gives you another like lever that you can change in the future to shake up the Atlas. Instead of just moving maps around, you can move what regions have what things, which could unlock new strategies.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how it pans out based on people's actual activity when they play it.
All right. Arta Eva asks, as this league is boss driven, will there be any rebalance of XP or drops for boss encounters, as it will take way more time for such encounters, like the enhanced bosses, for example?
Do you guys have any comments? We haven't put any work into changing the experience and drops for those bosses, though we are careful to make sure that they're in a good place. You know, if we saw any problems, we would fix it, but we haven't deemed there to be any issues there. Yeah, the team don't think it's going to take a lot longer. Most people get their boss fights done relatively quickly.
All right. Vice versa, 951 asks, can the Maven witness unique map bosses? If so, can there boss-specific loot drop in the boss rush?
No, you can't witness unique map bosses. That's something we certainly discussed and tried to achieve, but there are significant logistical issues on that one, so that's a thing for later.
Yeah, I imagine there'd be some pretty insane ones. Like some of those bosses have immunity during certain periods and stuff. We have to move them around the map and stuff. So yeah. Notcake's got two questions. Will Atlas passive trees be tied to certain regions? So, that is a repeated question. Oops, never mind. Casually Stoned asks, what order of rarity are we talking about with the new influence Maven orb? Something like influence exalt? Mirrors?
Awakener's orb.
They're estimating around the Awakener's orb level. You know, we certainly want it to be pretty punchy.
Makes sense since it's, I imagine, a drop from her fight.
That's a good assumption to make.
That's a very clever non-answer there, Chris.
Yeah, oh no, it's only sense, but there's an Act 1.
Okay. Sylphia asks, do we get skill points for each of the 8 Atlas skill trees, or do we just get 2 points and have to choose which tree to allocate in?
It's all on a per region basis. So you can completely max out a single region potentially before you touch the other ones if you choose to. And so to specifically answer the question, as you do the multi-boss fights in a given region, you get points for that particular region's trees.
Attacking my own question on there, roughly where does this line up? Is this like Awaken at 8, we're likely to have all the skill points unlocked, or is it significantly longer than that in terms of a tail of content?
How do you guys feel about that?
Get all of them in all regions, it's probably Awaken at 8, but to get all points in one region could be.
Okay, yeah, so they clarify that Awaken at 8 is about a good estimate for all regions, all trees, but to get all the points in a single region could be a fair while before that.
Okay, so that's like a longer tail thing that you can focus on, like
Mm.
unlocking. It's like you're settling into unlock your longer term strategies kind of thing.
Yeah, and it honestly depends on what you're prioritizing, right? Like you're going to prioritize the regions with things you want to be playing, and so you'll probably get those significantly further ahead than the ones where you're just doing it because you might occasionally play a map in that region and you don't really care about those mechanics.
Right. Same old asks, oh, a rather interesting question. Can you drop craftable watchstones before you get all the normal watchstones, thus amplifying your progression or speeding it up?
The craftable ones are super endgame rewards. Can you guys clarify? Yeah, you technically can. I mean, you may not have all of your 32 watchstones by the time that you start to get craftable ones. But yeah, the craftable ones are meant to be mostly coming after the normal ones.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, and you can also trade for them, right? Like you could earn a
Yeah.
bunch of currency doing something else and then fill up your atlas that way if that you feel is the best plan.
All right. Zen21 asks, does the tier of the map bosses affect the captured boss, like how watchstones alter tiers of maps in retros? This in reference to ritual. In ritual.
I'm failing to parse this question mentally.
So if you capture a boss and mobs in like tier 10, does that affect if you apply it to like a tier 5 map? Does that make them really dangerous, or does it scale to the map that you apply it to, I guess?
Good question.
Inherits area level of the map.
Right. It inherits the area level of the map that you captured it in.
Oh, okay. So pay attention to that then if you like trade for them.
Yeah.
With respect to the Maven.
Yes. So that's with respect. Right. So with respect to ritual, it inherits the level of the one you captured, and with regard to the Maven, it has a fixed level per encounter.
Okay, gotcha.
So you're saying that the 3, 4, 5, and so on are at fixed? Yeah. Okay.
So the 10 one is tier 16 equivalent.
Yeah. So when you're fighting 10 bosses at the same time, they're going to be tier 16 equivalently scaled ones, regardless of whether it was a low tier map that you captured it in.
Have to capture
Oh, and
high tier maps.
yeah, you have to capture them in high tier maps in that case.
Okay.
Yeah, it's amazing the number of border cases that I don't get exposed to when working on this, that the guys who are physically setting them actually understand.
Yeah, I'll mention if you guys have like pretty technical questions, a lot of that stuff is really often answered in the kind of FAQ that's released a little bit closer to launch as well.
Yeah, Bex is looking into how much community confusion there is and will release an FAQ if necessary. It's partly that we're hoping that this Q&A helps solve most of the stuff because it's a good opportunity to clarify things and explain it in plain English and so on. But, there'll probably be fine details we need to clarify afterwards.
I thought this was a good idea just because my first like feeling after watching the video that I was just like super overwhelmed and it was hard to like process everything just because of the sheer amount of info in that like 30-minute reveal. So it was a pretty good idea for that. Hopefully people are kind of like settling into it.
Should we have slowed it down and like spread it out over an hour and just be chill about it as we go? Or is it good to have that pace of content?
I think it's great for people to be like overwhelmed and freaking out and their heads exploding. They have like a week to get used to it all and figure it all out on Reddit and everything. So
we didn't want to waste people's time and there was a lot to cover, so we just got right into it.
Yeah, totally. And we have, this downtime and then Bayclast afterwards to, unwind a little bit and process. So that's good. Snoozius asks, who gets the choice/drop in ritual when multiplayer game? Well, like when playing with friends.
Yeah, that's a great question. So this is one of the leagues where it's the instance owner who gets to choose the rewards. And so you do not all get your own tribute. You do have to like work out what you're getting as a group and to share it. And it's usually based on implementation detail that we decide that. We ideally want rewards to be shared across the group where possible, but if it doesn't make sense for how we're actually structuring the league, then sometimes it's the outcome. And when doing it, we just make sure that there are enough rewards for playing as a group and you get the ability to share it out as you choose. If your group are bad at sharing, I would encourage you to take turns opening the maps so you each get the chance to be bad at sharing with your friends.
Wow. True though. Clemmy Clem asks, will there be sextant mods that affect the amount of ritual points you get whenever a ritual mechanic spawns in the map?
Yeah. If the sextants spawn packs and the packs spawn within the ritual site, then it absolutely does affect it. In terms of actually adding mods to sextants that affect rituals directly, that's something we would do if ritual goes core later, potentially. We have not confirmed or decided, have no idea whether it's going core. It depends a lot on what people say. If they like it, don't like it,
It's significant to know that like just enhancing the map effectively will add extra packs to the ritual site as well, and that it's not fully isolated.
Yeah.
It's Parsalien asks, are there always 3 rituals per zone, or does the number of rituals per zone increase as you progress through the story, or does it change in other ways? I'll add on.
My understanding is it does get larger. Let me just clarify with the guys.
Scales very slightly.
Yeah, so it does scale very slightly. So the range of number of rituals you can get does get higher as you get into higher tier areas. We do want it to stay simple at the beginning of the storyline, so you're not having to do like 6 ritual fights on the coast or something. But by the time you're handling red tier maps, I'm sure you're getting quite a lot.
It reminds me of like a cross between like shrines and a beyond, a breach kind of encounter. So having like 3 or something seems like a lot of extra monsters per zone. What is the range here? Is it like 3 to 6, 3 to 5,
What's
1
the
to
cap?
3?
Okay, like 4 is the cap, right? Yeah, 4 is the cap. Currently, this is the kind of thing we're iterating on while doing our testing. You never know; the alpha testers might have feedback. You'll probably find that 4 is a reasonable number when you try it out.
All right, that does seem like a lot. Berkjam asks, are there going to be stash tabs for heist, harvest, and ritual?
We do not have any new stash tabs at the moment. I don't think ritual needs to have a stash tab. You get some vessels, but they're real rare, and you kind of use them as you get them.
I guess like one item doesn't really warrant a tab for them.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty clear about our policy for tabs now, where we've explained that if there's mandatory progression items, we'll provide free storage for them, and if there's optional reward style stuff that you would normally just store in regular tabs, then we may provide purchasable specialized storage for that for people that want it. And we're trying to find a sweet spot here where tabs are free, but at the same time we can still fund development of the game.
I think we have a question from Amy here. What are your thoughts on support characters, for example, Ourobots and stuff like that? And how would you like to move forwards with that archetype in the future?
Well, I think it's really important that players have a lot of different ways of playing, and it's even interesting to see within our team how many people like playing support characters, including very, very senior members of the team, Mark. So we definitely want to make sure it's fully supported, and I think that because the person who has the title of game director on Path of Exile plays support characters, you're probably likely to see stuff in the future. What he's planning, I honestly don't know. That's above my pay grade.
I feel like they are generally insanely strong, and it's just like not that many people get into them for it to be a big problem. Whereas if like half the player base was playing support characters, it would be something you'd have to tone down.
Matt clarifies there's no bias whatsoever, but
yeah.
Philosophically, I see Path of Exile as a game with many, many ways to play. If you want to sit and trade with people, just sit there flipping currency. That's a valid way to play. It generates currency. If you want to sit there working out the perfect heist, if you want to sit there, taking advantage of the new league content and trying to be the first person to work out how to get the best rewards, that is a valid way to play the game. And playing an aura character that doesn't kill monsters directly, also a great way to play the game. And I think that providing more avenues beyond just killing monsters helps with action RPGs quite a lot, because there are 1,000 ways to kill monsters already. It's good to add a few hundred other ways to play too.
Great stuff. Stale Humor asks, what is your favorite skill gem change? What skill gem are you looking forward to using and seeing used by the community?
There's this look blankness when I realize I haven't actually gone through the patch notes yet myself. Mark and Andrew, do you have any favorite skill gem changes that you're aware of in this particular patch? Okay, what happened with Scorching Ray?
Cast time got halved.
Cast time got halved. Okay, so there's some excitement about Scorching Ray. They had a mandate basically, and not these particular developers, but the designers working on the skills had a mandate basically of, buff as many skills in impactful ways as possible. And I think there are 40 existing ones, which is kind of an understated part of this expansion. There could have been a lot more attention put on that, but the goal is basically that no one knows what's best to play now. There's 19 sets of Ascendancy changes, 40 skills buffed. It should mix the meta up a lot more than most normal expansion releases do, and hopefully for a decent amount of time. I don't think this one will be solved quite so quickly.
All right. World Creator asks, bearing in mind we're going to have a huge Ascendancy rework, what about the Scion? What are your thoughts on Scion in general?
The Scion has been reworked as part of the expansion. So basically all 19 Ascendancy classes got attention, where we sat there and said, what are we doing with this tree? How are we changing it? 3 of them had quite large implementation-based sets of changes. The Inquisitor, Elementalist, and Deadeye actually had some serious amount of work, but the other ones at least had us going through and reviewing each thing and changing stuff. And so the amount varies from class to class, but we made sure the Scion was included. I personally am generally relatively happy with her place, and this is partly because if we make her too powerful, she jumps right ahead quite quickly, and so it's in a pretty good place, but we don't want her to lag behind.
Jard Extreme wants to know if you're going to implement the trade website as an in-game thing.
I don't see harm in doing this, and I kind of do think that it would be a positive thing to have the ability to embed a browser in the game so that you can directly link stuff, you can click on people's names to automatically whisper them. It's not at all against our philosophy with trade, right? Like, we're not against making things easier from a convenience point of view. It's more about, the fundamentals of how trade works that we have a bit of philosophical views on. Having said that, there are interesting issues with getting it working in game to do with embedding browsers and the right middleware for that and various issues, and we just haven't got to that yet. It is fascinating how complicated development gets when you're targeting multiple platforms and consoles. And let's say hypothetically you pick some middleware to embed websites in your game, and then that middleware may not work on like M1 ARM processor Macs, for example, and then our Mac users get upset at that. Or it just requires a bit of work to get that kind of stuff going. And in the meantime, people can Alt Tab.
All right, good stuff.
Or Command Key Tab or whatever.
Is there any thing you really want to point out to people, like your favorite thing from the announcement, since you probably combed over this a few times now? Anything that really stood out that you really want to mention to people? What was your favorite?
It's actually pretty difficult to pick what the favorite is here, because the League itself was one of the best combat focused ones we've done for a while. It's just a pure risk versus reward kind of thing. The player chooses how deep they want to go with the rituals, and in the end game they can choose how deep they want to stack the amount of monsters. And the tribute is literally costing on various items from throughout Path of Exile's history and some new ones. And the deferral system makes some very, very interesting choices there, because you'll see really expensive stuff, and putting it on lay-by over time kind of makes it cost more over time, but you do actually get to afford it even if you can't today. And so that will be an interesting experiment. So the League itself obviously wants a big expansion to go with it, but is probably going to be one of the more, condensed fun ones that we've done for quite some time. Very true Path of Exile. The expansion just adds so much to the end game, and honestly, my amount of late end game Path of Exile play recently has been relatively low, so I don't even understand the depth of the expansion. Every time we're discussing it in the team, I realize that it's way more than I thought it was, and that's going to be exciting. So I'm expecting that to have quite a long impact on the end game for some time. And then one thing I wanted to really make sure with this expansion was that the amount of metagame mix-up, as we were just talking, was quite high. We really didn't want it to be that there's a league and there's an expansion, but you're playing the same build you were playing last league. And so I think that the unsung hero of it is going to be the fact that there's a lot of new viable builds and craziness that's going to be happening there.
Awesome stuff. Also, you made golems respawn. Just wanted to point that out. That's awesome.
Yep. And there are a lot of ascendancies and a lot of region trees and a lot of other stuff that we get to reveal over the next week.
Fantastic stuff. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much for the Q&A, Chris. We're going to take a short break here on the live stream and then head on over to Bay Class to unpack a little bit.
Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you very much. I assume